Okay, so the topic we're going to cover is Grails testing. Okay, and these are the topics that we are going to cover. So we will talk about Grails testing support, and we're going to actually look into unit testing first, and then we are going to look into two popular the testing related plugins for Grails application. One is called the Spark. That's actually a testing framework like a JUnit. Okay, you can use a Spark for unit testing and integration testing and functional testing. And so we're going to actually learn some basics on Spark, nothing to do with the Grails. It is being used in many other application testing, so we're going to actually see some basic concept of Spark testing, and then we're going to see how we can use Spark for Grails testing. And another popular plugin is called the JEP. That is for functional testing. So here, you're going to actually use a JEP for functional testing. Again, we're going to learn some JEP basics, and then we'll see how we can use JEP for Grails functional testing. Okay, and lastly, we're going to see integration testing. Okay, so Grails testing support, as you have seen before, all create and generate commands create a unit or integration test template code so that you can actually add your testing code right away. And in order to run your testing code, all you have to do is say Grails test app. Okay, so that's for running your test. And after testing is done, the report gets generated in both a plain text form and HTML form. Okay, so you can see the result. Testing target. So you can specify testing target after test app. So if you do not specify test target, then it will run all test target. Okay. So if you specify name of your controller here, then it's going to run all tests for that controller. Okay, and you can use wildcard. So if you say Grails test app and start controller, then it will run all controllers. Okay, and you can specify the package name as well. So you can say sum.org and then start controller. So any controller that is under the package will be tested. And you can also run all tests, in this case sum.org.start, that will actually test not only controller the related testing but everything else as well. Okay, you can be as specific as possible as well, so you can specify my controller and .test login, so you're testing the login method of my controller. Let's talk about the concept of test phases and test types. So Grails organizes test by phase and then type. Okay, so you're going to specify your the phase and type just before target like this, phase and type. Okay, usually you don't specify it. Okay, that means all phases and all types are being run. Okay. So test phase relates to the state of Grails application during test, and type related to the testing mechanism. So this test phase includes, for example, unit phase, and functional phase, and integration phase. And test type relates to testing mechanism. For example, like a Spark. So you can think of Spark as one of the testing mechanism, or JUnit is another testing mechanism. Okay. So in addition to, let's say, target, you can specify this phase and type, as I said before, as part of your command. Okay. Again, the specifying this phase and type are optional. So absence basically acts as wildcard. So Grails comes with 4 test phases, as I said before: unit, integration, and functional, and other. So other is not really used. So unit, integration, and functional, those are 4 phases. Okay. And as for types, test types, JUnit test type, is provided for unit and integration phases. Okay. So JUnit test types have the same name as the phase. Okay. So basically, if you are running JUnit integration test, then you probably say integration like this. Okay, so basically what you're saying is that I'm running integration phase, and the test type I'm using is JUnit integration. Okay. If you want to run just unit phase, then you can say Grails test app and unit and colon, and everything is wildcard. So basically, you're saying that I want to run all unit phase testing. For the matter, if you want to run all functional phase testing, then you say Grails test app functional colon. Same thing with integration. So here, I'm actually running all integration phase testing and unit testing. So I'm actually running both unit and integration phase testing, and the testing target is with this format. Okay, so under the package of sum.org and everything, and every package sub packages, and then any ending. So basically everything. Okay, so continuation of test types and test phases. So testing plugins may provide new test phases or new test types for existing phases. Okay, so as I said before, Grails comes with those 4 testing phases, and then JUnit for JUnit test type for unit phase as well as integration phase. Okay, now Grails Spark plugin is one plugin that adds new test types to Grails. Okay, so so in order to run Spark test, then you can say Grails test app and colon and Spark. Okay, so here Spark is new test type. Okay, if you have both JUnit tests as well as Spark test, and if you don't specify anything, then it will run them all. Okay. Here, you run all Spark tests in the functional phase. So you can specify functional colon Spark. That means I want to run all tests on the functional and Spark test. Okay. If you want to run all functional phase testing, JUnit as well as Spark, I should say JUnit, then you can say functional and colon. Okay. So you can think of JUnit as a testing framework, right? You can think of Spark, same thing, JUnit and Spark. Those are actually examples of testing framework. And you can think of, when I say test types, you can think of testing frameworks. All right, so let's talk about unit testing. So what is unit testing? Unit testings are tests at the unit level. So you are testing individual methods or block of code or domain class without consideration of surrounding infrastructure. Okay, so if you are running, for example, unit testing for a controller, and a controller obviously is using, for example, service object or domain object. In that case, you want to mark the domain object as well as service object. Okay. Okay, so unit tests are typically run without the presence of physical resources that involve I/O, such as databases or socket connections or files. Okay, so it's completely isolated. It's just testing the logic inside that domain class or that controller class or service class. Okay. If you want to run your code using this surrounding physical resources, then you're talking about integration testing. Okay, so you're talking about integration phase. All right. So unit testing is typically very quick. Okay, because it doesn't depend on anything else, and whatever that it needs should be marked. All right, concept of text mix-ins. Since Grails 2.0, collection of unit testing mix-ins provided by Grails to let you enhance the behavior of JUnit 3, 4, and Spark test. Okay, so the previous version of JUnit 3 style, Grails unit test case classes hierarchy is still supported for backward compatibility, but now we're going to actually use text mix-ins. Okay, so we'll see examples of that in the following slide. So this is an example. Suppose if you are trying to create, if you are creating unit testing for your controller, then you're going to actually use this notation test4. Okay, test4, and then you specify the name of the controller. So this test4 notation will define the class on the test. So you specify the target for your testing, And then it will actually create a field for the type of class on the test. So in this case, it will create a controller field so that you can use the controller field for your testing logic. If test4 was used for the testing for service, then service will be created automatically for you so that you can use the service field for your testing logic. Okay, and we'll see example of that in a following slide and hands-on lab. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, that's fine. And for controller, as I said, you have to mark whatever the controller is using. So in this case, it's marking a book domain object and author domain object as well as book service object. Okay, all right, so it creates a mock version of any collaborators. Now, nice thing about this is that once you actually mark the book domain object or author object, all the GROM APIs are still available for you. Okay, so in fact, the the testing framework will actually simulate all those GROM APIs. Okay, so the things you want to test for domain. So the things you can test for your domain class is check whether the validation constraints work or not. So you can see whether there is in fact any errors. Okay, for the domain class after binding and validation is done. Check if your binding dynamic finder methods work. So you can call author by find by first name and last name, and it should result non-null object. Okay, so you can test like that. So these are the examples that you can do for your domain class testing. As for testing for your controller, so the things you can test is, for example, check if your action performs redirections correctly. So after you perform a certain action with your controller, you probably call a method, action of your controller, and see whether redirection has been correctly set. Okay. Check if a model object return has the correct properties. So here, once you actually, the return from, for example, like a show or a list, you can see whether the model that has been returned contains the correct properties. In this case, we are checking whether student instance list size. So this is something that was returned from the action. We are just checking whether size is 0 or something else. Okay. You can also test if a view selection is correct. So once an action is done, then the view is supposed to be returned, and you can check whether view is correct. Okay. You can check whether a flash message has been set correctly. Okay, so you can say controller.flash.message has been set correctly. And you can also see whether invalid parameters are handled correctly or not, whether there is in fact an error after invalid parameters are actually being fed. Okay, so these are the examples that you can do for your controller testing. All right, so let's do exercise 1. So here what we're going to do is we are going to do so let's do exercise 1. Yeah, so here we're going to actually take a look at the scaffolding code. We're going to actually do generate all, and we will see testing code that got generated. Okay, so I have created already my app here. Okay, and let's see, we have any domain class. So let me see whether I have a domain class already. It's not, so I'm going to create the domain class, new and domain class. Okay, so we created a domain class, and then we are going to update the domain class with these two properties, and the constraint, name constraint is unique, and size is 5 and 10. Okay, so I'm gonna update this guy. Okay, save the change, and we are gonna perform generate all. So we are going to do generate all on the student domain class, new and generate all. Finish. So we can see the testing code has been generated. Okay, so once this is done, we'll see testing code. Okay, so we can see two testing code was generated. One is for the controller and the other one is for domain class. So if you take a look at the domain class, we have tested something and it will fail. Okay, so we need to implement testing logic here. Okay, and we are using test4, so we are actually testing this domain class. And in terms of the controller testing, we can see is again test4 controller. Now, because when you're using test4 and student controller, we should be able to use controller. So this is the field that I was talking about that gets automatically created by the testing framework. So you can actually use this controller object for your testing. So in this case, we are testing whether index, we call the index action of the controller, and then we are actually checking the response redirection has been done correctly. So it should redirect to student list. So we are actually checking the the result. Okay, and test list. We also testing the list here. So we call the list action for the controller, and then we are testing whether. So if you take a look at the list action, let's take a look at the list. Action. So list action should actually return the student instance list and then student instance count, student instance total. Okay, so we can actually check whether this is actually being returned correctly. Okay, so we are actually checking whether student instance list size is zero. At this point it's supposed to be 0 because we have not had any the student instances, and the total is supposed to be 0 as well. Okay, test create. So here we created, and then the student instance supposed to be not null. So once once the create is done, then it should be null, should not be null. And once it is saved, the model of student instance supposed to be null, and then the view is supposed to be student create. Okay, and then we also, in this case, we're actually doing a two test. So we actually do the reset, and then here we actually providing valid parameters. Okay, so we call populate validate param here. Okay, so we need to actually set the validation valid parameters. Okay, so this is something that we have to set. Okay, so if you run this code, we'll have the 9 errors in fact. So let's actually run this test code. Run as test app. Yeah, the reason it's gonna fail is, of course, domain class. We didn't actually add the logic, and also we didn't set the populate valid params. We didn't set the valid params. So that's the change we are gonna actually make. Okay. So if you actually take a look at the if you run this test at the command line, you're gonna see these 9 failures. Okay. And you can see, I mean, this is really nice. It really tells you what has been, what has actually failed and why it failed. Okay. So yeah, so this is all. You can see it performs 9 unit testing and 6 failed actually. Okay. So what we have to do is, yeah. So and then you should be able to see if you're running on the the Eclipse IDE, you can actually take a look at the result right away. Okay, by clicking the link. Okay. So yeah, so you can actually see the result if you click this one, and you should see the result. And you can also actually go, these places. So let's actually see the result. Yeah, here you go. So this is the result, and you can actually see what failed. Yeah, so it has a test with failures and packages and things like that. So this is controller test. So you can see more detailed information here. So we have test index worked, test update failed, test save failed because we have not really provided valid parameters. Okay, of course the student domain class failed. Okay, because it's actually set to fail. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to actually provide the valid testing code for domain class. So let's actually provide the valid domain class. So I'm going to actually go to student here. And let's provide the valid testing logic. So here, what I'm going to do is, we're going to actually test student validation. So we are going to create a new student. This is invalid size, right? So student size is supposed to be between 5 and 10 characters. The name has to be between 5 and 10 characters. So we are going to say validation should fail. Okay, using assert false. Well, this one assert true. Okay, so that is a valid the testing logic. And then we're going to change student controller testing logic here, and we have to provide so this is the we're going to provide these 2 lines. We are providing a valid the name and age, okay, for testing purpose. So here, that's where you have to add. So Sang Shin is the correct size, and age 10. There is no validation constraint, so that is fine. And then I think that's pretty much it. That's the only thing. Okay, then we want to actually also provide invalid parameters. Okay, so let's try to provide either too short or too long name. So that is this one is test update. So test update. So here we are going to provide very long name, which is greater than the 10 that is allowed. Okay. Okay. So we save them all, and then we are going to test it again. And this time it should work. And again, we have seen the result. Okay, this time they all should work fine. Well, let's assume it worked. So let's actually move on to the next. Okay, so it worked. Completed 9 test units and 0 failed. Okay. All right, so let's move on to Spark testing framework basics. Okay, so here we're going to learn the Sparks as a testing framework. We are not going to use this Spark for now for Grails yet. Okay, so what is Spark? Spark is a testing and specification framework for Java and Groovy applications. So you can use this Spark for any Java and Groovy application testing. So it's called a specification framework because as part of the testing, you're actually providing some specification in English like language. Okay, so it provides highly expressive and beautiful specification language. So it does, thanks to its built-in JUnit runner. So you can, JUnit runner, it has a built-in JUnit runner. So Spark is compatible with most IDEs and build tools and continuous integration servers. What it means is that all these tools like IDEs and build tools, they actually use JUnit runner as a kind of, runner. So, this Spark framework actually has a built-in JUnit runner. So whenever Spark tests actually run, that JUnit runner, built-in JUnit runner is actually being run. Okay, so that's the reason there is really no change that need to be done in IDEs and build tools and continuation integration servers to run the Spark testing. So Spark is inspired from various technologies: JUnit, RSpec, JMark, Mockito, and Groovy, Scala, Vulkans, and other fascinating life forms. Okay. So most Grails developers prefer to use Spark over default JUnit. Okay, and you should use Spark as well rather than JUnit because Spark provides a lot easier to understand, a lot simpler, and the schemes for writing testing logic. So why Spark? Yeah, I should have Spark. So again, it provides a beautiful language provided by Groovy. Okay, and you can express your thoughts in beautiful and highly expressive English-like specification language, and it's easy to learn, and it eliminates waste. So in JUnit you have to actually use this assert statement, and that's really kind of the waste of your I would say typing. I would say so you don't have to actually have a search statement. All you have to do is just having some, the evaluation logic. Okay, no record and replay marking API. So the Mockito and other marking API is pretty complex. You have to actually record, and you have to, it's actually pretty I would say superfluous. I would say. So there is no annotation involved. It's pretty simple to use. Okay. Again, test result provides a detailed information and compatible with JUnit. Alright, so in terms of terminology, specifications. So specifications describe expected features. So features could be properties and aspects exhibited by a system of interest on the feature method. So you're going to actually specify, what is the feature supposed to look like or behave like using what is called the feature methods. Okay, so that's English-like description of what the system of interest should look like or behave like. Okay, so you can in the system of test, you can use specifications, meaning you can use a Spark for testing for single class or the whole application. Okay, so that is what is called the specification. Then there is actually what is called the fixture method, and the feature method and block. So let's actually talk about each of these things in a bit more detail. So as I said before, specification is represented by this spark.lang specification class. Okay, so any of your specification will extend this specification class. Name of the specification relates to the system of interest or system of testing, system of the target system. Okay, of the target of the testing. Okay, so it could be customer spec or H264 video playback or whatever name of your choice. Okay, so examples of specification in Groovy language is like this. My first specification extends this spark.lang specification. Okay, and then inside you're going to have 4 different things like a fields, fixture methods, and feature method, and helper methods. So typically you're going to see mostly this feature method, okay? And this is in fact the most important piece. Okay, other things are sort of the helpers and optional, and you don't need to have those. Okay, so let's talk about the fixture method. So fixture method is something that it's like a setup. Okay, so so setup, it runs for every feature method. Cleanup, it runs after every feature method. Setup spec is run just once. Okay, before the first feature method. Cleanup spec is actually run once after last feature method. Okay, so this is basically just setting things up and cleaning things up, the environment. Okay, so feature method, this is the most important part of your specification. So when you see typical specification, feature methods are the ones that you see the most. Okay, and everything else you probably don't see much. So feature methods are heart of the specification, and they describe the features, again, properties and aspects and behavior that you expect to find in the system on the specification. Okay, so the feature method look like something like this. You say def, and this is the description of the feature. So this is English like feature, pushing an element on the stack, and then you go some blocks. Inside this feature method, you're going to have blocks. Okay. So conceptually, you are going to have 4 different phases inside a single feature method. Setup, for example, setup features fixture, or provide what is called a stimulus and then response. So stimulus is something you actually do something and then the response. Okay, and then you do the cleanup. Okay, so typically you're gonna see just a stimulus and response. Okay, so let's see an example. Before we do that, let's actually talk about the blocks. So as I said before, these phases, okay, so setup, stimulus, and response and cleanup are represented by these blocks. So these are actual Groovy statement. Setup is for setting things up. When is actually stimulus, and then is response. So you say when you do something, and then something has to be something. So then is typically assert, okay, and when is something that you actually perform something, okay. Expect is a combination of when and then, okay. So I'm going to explain all these things in a bit more detail. Cleanup is for cleanup. Where is basically providing the data, okay. All right, so let's actually see examples of this. So as I said before, feature method has these blocks. So these blocks are represented by these 6: setup, when, then, end, cleanup, and where. And there is also another one called the end, okay, right? So there are 6 kinds of blocks, okay? Setup, when, then, and expect, and cleanup, where blocks, and there is also a and the end, okay? So feature method must have at least one explicit block, okay? And block divide the method into distinct sections and cannot be nested, okay? So these are the blocks that you can actually use: given, setup, when, then, expect, where, and end, and cleanup, okay? So given will actually give preconditions or data fixtures. Setup is the same thing as given, okay? So you can use either given or setup. And when is stimulus, and then is response. So these 2 are the most important. And then expect is the same thing as when and then. It's a combination of these 2 in a single statement, so to speak. And where provides the multiple inputs. And is a divider, so you can use this and any place you want. And cleanup is for cleaning things up, okay? All right. So let's talk about these blocks in a bit more detail. So when and then blocks. When and then blocks always occur together. So when is providing stimulus, and then is providing a response. Okay, so when block may contain arbitrary code, okay, and while then blocks are restricted to conditions and exception conditions. So you can think of then as the is actually representing the assert after when is done. Okay, so whenever so this is an example. This is a when block. This is a then block. Okay, so when something is done, so this is a stimulus. So we actually pushing an element into stack. Then the stack should not be empty, and the stack size is supposed to be 1, and the stack peak, if I pick it, it should be element, okay? So you can see the things on the then is conditions, and it's basically the conditions and exception conditions. It cannot be just arbitrary code, okay? But when could be just arbitrary code, okay? So conditions, conditions describe an expected state, much like a JUnit assertion. So you can see on the then, you see the expected state, but you don't actually have to use assert. So you can actually use a lot simpler syntax on the spot, okay? Because you don't have to use this assert statement anymore, okay? So basically conditions are written as plain Boolean expressions, eliminating the need for this assertion API. So a lot more simpler syntax than the JUnit. Expect is the same thing as when and then. So there are cases where you want to actually combine them. So in this case, I'm actually I like to find out the max value of 1 and 2, and then assign to x. Okay, so x is supposed to be in this case 2, right? So these 2 could be combined into a single expect statement. So I can say math.max1.2 equal 2. Okay, so these 2 are the same thing as this. All right. So where block is for providing data-driven, the testing. So you can actually provide the multiple input values. Okay. So where block always comes last in a block, it is used to write data-driven feature method. So in this case, I'm using expect method right here, and then where. So here I'm using A, B, and C, right? And I'm actually providing A as an array of 5 and 3, B at array of 1 and 9, and C and 5 and 9. So it's like, you're actually writing 2 versions of the feature method. One set is the data of the 5, 1, and 5. And the other one is actually using 3, 9, 9. Okay? So basically, we are providing 2 different sets, okay? As a data for testing. Okay, so this is the hello world Spark example. So this is what we're going to actually try to test in a few seconds. So this is the name of the my Spark, hello Spark. This could be any name of your choice. Extends, you have to extend the specification, Spark.length specification. So this is the specification, and this is a feature method. So we have a two feature method. One is the length of the Sparks and his friends' names. That is the description of this feature method. And then we have inside of it we have expect and then where. So here, this is the basically the things that we want to test. The name of the site is supposed to be the length. Now this is a where method where we are providing three different sets of data. Okay, so the first name is a Spark and the length is supposed to be 5, Kirk 4, and Spud is 6. Okay, so we are basically providing three sets of data for testing this logic. Okay, so we have a two feature method. Okay, so specification, Spark specification as a documentation. Okay, so well-written specifications are valuable source of information. So especially for high-level specification, targeting the wide audience than just developers. So you might in fact have architects, customers, domain experts. They might want to actually see what things are supposed to be done. So in that case, you can collect the information from the Spark specification. Okay, and this specification should actually give reasonably good idea in terms of what that system is supposed to behave. Okay, so you can see these are natural languages, right? Okay, all right. So setup, you can specify open a database connection, and then whatever code go here. And yeah, by the way, and you can actually use this and any place. Okay, and this is basically ignored, but it actually provides the variable. The specification textual description of the block. Okay. Now, Spark versus BDD. So in behavior-driven development, they use what is called the given, when, and then, right? Okay. So given is the same thing as setup. So you certainly can use given instead of the setup. So you can say given, and you provide description, and when you also provide a description. And also provide a description. Also, you can use end. So all these things could be actually collected and then give the behavior-driven development. They actually give you some kind of storage, so to speak. Okay, so you can certainly use a Spark for your BDD development. In fact, that's what people do. Okay, so let's do exercise 2. So we are going to actually use what is called the Spark Web Console. So Spark Web Console is, basically, the Spark community provides this web console. Okay, so we're gonna just go to this web console. And it actually provides a simple, my first specification. Okay, so obviously this will fail because max of 1, 2 is not 3, it's supposed to be 2. So you can actually run it. So here, when you run it, you are going to see the result. Obviously, it will fail, right? And you can actually change it and run it again. Okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, I should actually see the bottom here. So this is the result. Okay. So it's my first specification. Let's try this. It failed because the actual value is supposed to be 2, but what you're testing is 3. So it's failed. It's because it's false. Okay. So we're gonna actually change this one and then run it again, and then we are going to see it's successful. Okay. All right. Now you can also actually see a bunch of other Spark testing scripts. Community members have contributed. So you can actually click View Recent Scripts, and we're gonna try just the Hello Spark. That's actually something that I show you in the slide. Okay, so here we can edit this console. So I'm gonna just click this one. So I have that code right here. So basically, I'm testing whether this name, the size of it is in fact correct like this. So if I run it, it should actually succeed. So I see, oops, let's try again. Okay, so length of the Spark and his friend's name is successful. Now I'm gonna add another data. So here I say Sang and let's give the wrong value. Okay, so if I run it, and it will fail. It failed. Okay, for my testing. Okay, so if I provide the correct value for and run it again, then it should succeed. Okay, all right. So that is the web console exercise. Okay, so all right, so in this case we are just using the expect, right? We are not really seeing anything fancy, you know. We don't see any given and when and things like that. So those are the things that we can actually see, when you do Grails. Okay, I mean, if you actually see other examples, they have the examples of it more complex than this Hello Spark. Okay. All right, so this is what we did. So we changed it and run it. Okay, good. So we're gonna actually move on to how we can use a Spark for Grails testing. So this is an example for testing for author. Okay, so this is actually testing domain class. So I'm testing author. Okay, and I need to extend specification. And here I'm going to actually try to find author by first name and last name. Okay. Now here you can see we have a setup, which is the same thing as given, and when, and then, and where. So here, the first thing I have to do is I have to mark this domain object. So when you say mark domain and author, what it does is going to actually provide the GORM feature. Okay. So it's going to actually let me try to call save. Okay, it's not really actually adding anything to the actual table, but it's actually providing some GORM-like response for me. Okay, so this is what you have to do to have GORM-like simulator layer for this author author domain object, and then I'm gonna create and save that author, and then I'm gonna check whether I'm gonna call find by first name and last name, and giving first name and last name. By the way, this is where. So this is the data I'm actually using. Okay, so I'm actually testing whether that that actually returns non-null value. Okay, so this one should succeed. All right, so this is an example where you can use Spark for domain unit test class. This is how you can use Spark for controller. So here again, I'm using test4. So I should have a controller field. Okay, as we have seen in the JUnit example. And here you have to mark all the domain object that you're using in your controller. So here we are using only author domain object. So we're going to just mark just author domain object. Again, you have to extend specification. And we have just a single the feature method. So list action and one author. So here we are going to, so in this where clause, we are going to create one author object. Okay. And then the setup, we are going to save it, and then we are going to see whether the list is, when you call the list action, it should actually result in this. Okay, so this is actually testing whether the list action is behaving as expected with one author. Okay, later on we're going to actually see with the two authors when you do the hands-on lab. Okay, so let's do the hands-on lab 3. So I provide a sample application, Grails Spark application on the samples directory. So that's where I'm going to actually go to. So let me just go to okay. And so here I have a sample Grails here. And we are going to use the Grails Spark samples. So we're going to go to Grails, this application, and we're going to actually run it. Grails run. Let me make sure that I'm not running anything. Okay, so let's stop this guy. So nothing is running. Okay, cool. Alright, so we're going to actually run app on this guy. Yeah, we're going to actually take a look at how this application works first. Okay. So basically, this is going to display the authors. So we have 3 authors, and the first name and last name, and this is a book list. Okay, so there are 4 books. Okay, and then we're gonna actually start the application to do the testing. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to we're going to actually take a look at the author spec. Okay, so when you actually run this application, when you actually see you currently already have a version of the plugin 2.1, do you want to upgrade? Either you can say Y or the no, either one is fine. Okay, so I said Y. So you can see the on the test unit we have the Spark test for domain class, as well as Spark test for controller, and as well as Spark test for the service. Okay. So here we are going to test just the unit. Okay. So you can either say this or this, okay? Because we do not have any JUnit test. The only thing we have is just the Spark test in the sample application. Okay. So when you actually run the application, it will actually run all the tests, and for now the tests are all passed. Okay. So you can actually run the test with this if you're using Eclipse, and they should all succeed. Okay, and you can actually, by the way, from the command line, you can actually open the test report from Grails shell and open test report, and you should be able to see the test report. Okay, like this. So let's take a look at the author spec.groovy file here. Okay, so let's just try to see whether this application is working application. Okay, so author controller, and so you can see authors and you can see books. Okay, so it works. So let's actually stop the application. I'm gonna just Control-C out on this. All right, so what we want to do is now we're gonna actually do the unit testing on this Spark. So what we are going to say is we're going to say Grails test app and unit the Spark. Okay, so let's say so we're going to actually use the Grails shell as was shown in the documentation, and we're going to say the test app unit Spark or unit : either one is fine. Or you can say just, so if you say test app : Spark, then it will run all Spark tests, including integration as well as controller and everything. Okay, so for now we're going to just test the unit, the testing. So we're going to say test app and unit : like this. Okay, so it will run I don't know how many. So it would say. It looks like I did. 21 Spark test. Okay, right here. Okay, so no. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. So this is the specification for domain class, author domain class. So here we use test for author, okay, and then the feature method is find author by first name and last name. So this is the example that we have seen in the slide. The first thing you have to do is mark domain, as we have seen before, and then this is where we are feeding the data. So first name and last name is being fed on this, all these blocks. So then we have author saved, and then we can perform find by first name and last name. Okay, should not be null. So this one is a first name constraint. We're actually checking the first name constraint is correct. So first name has to be, I think, 20 characters. So here we are providing 2 values. So this is where block, right? And we are providing, in fact, the 3 values. So this is the invalid name, and this is a valid name, which is 20 characters, and this is 21 characters, and this is invalid one as well because it's null, it's a blank. Okay, so these are the data set that we are going to use. And again, so here we are going to mark for constraints test. Okay, this adds, basically validation methods back to the domain class for testing purpose. Okay, so this is again provided for you. It's just like a built-in methods that you can use. Okay, and then we are going to create a new author, and then we're going to call validate. Okay, and then we see whether there is in fact any errors or not. Okay, well, then what we do is we actually checking the value with this value. So this is the valid value that we actually picking up. Okay, so the value could be the false, true, or the false. Okay, so we are actually giving 3 data set, and for each data set we are actually testing it whether it actually returns correct, true, and false. Okay, and this is a last name constraint, the same deal. Okay, yeah, so that's domain class. So if you're using Eclipse, so that's the code. Yeah, so you can see, we all passed the 21 test. Okay. Now we're gonna actually modify book domain class. So let's remove this test of 20. Okay, so basically we are going to kind of to see whether testing this time it should fail, right? Okay. So I'm going to just open from Grails. So we're going to actually modify the book constraint, okay, and and see whether that is going to cause a test failure. It should, okay, because now we have actually same book the testing class. So I'm gonna just do this, comment out like this, and save the change, and let's try to run it. And this time the book test should fail because there is no constraints. So one of the testing should fail. 1 or 2 testing should fail. Okay, so we did that, and yeah, so we see the failure. So basically the title, there is no constraint. So this is the value. I mean, yeah. So there is no constraint. Okay, so did I save? Blank, false, max size, and let's see the testing. Test and unit test and Grails here, Spark and domain and book. So let's see whether they have yeah, so this is title is no longer 20 characters. So let's actually try to change the author, because we know that domain. So we'll just change this one. And save all changes. And now let's actually try to run it. Oh, this one, no failure. So am I actually looking at the right place? Yeah, so Grails Testing, Spark applications, and Grails Testing, sample applications, author. This is interesting. Why it actually succeeding when one of the tests is supposed to fail. Test. Oh, I probably have to actually restart the testing because you know the reason is the reason it probably actually succeeded is they're actually running the same shell. Okay, so you know I'm actually running different shells, so this time it should actually fail. Yeah, so there is a failure. Okay. Yeah, the reason it succeeded over here is because, you know, again, whenever I change the domain class, I have to, in fact, kind of restart the runtime environment, which I didn't because I was using the shell. Okay. So when I actually close the shell and run it, now it failed. Okay. All right. So that is working as expected. Okay. So let's save the change. So we see that. Okay, now what we are going to do next is we're going to study the book spec. Yeah, so this is the book, you know, the same deal. Okay, so pretty much the same code. Now let's study the controller testing. So controller testing, again, something that we have kind of, you know, studied before. So here, you know, we actually, so list action 2 controllers and max 1. So here, first we actually save the author instance. And yeah, so this is a case that we are testing list action with the 2 authors and max 1. It should actually display just 1. So we created the first author, then we created the second author and save, and then we set the params max to 1. Okay, and you know, here we actually have a first author instance and second author instance from where, so we are giving this data, and then we perform list operation, and it should return this model. Okay, where it should actually have an author list and this, and the author instance total is 2. Okay, so I mean you can actually get the sense of how this thing's actually being tested. Okay, all right, so that is and again we can actually modify this code. So let's actually try a very simple thing. So here we're going to actually change index action, and redirection is supposed to end with a list, right? But we're going to just give us something incorrect. So we are going to say controller yeah, where is the controller test? Oh, here we go. Okay, so all right, so here I'm gonna just say XXX or something like that, and save the change, and again try to run it, and then we should have actually one controller test failure. Okay. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so this redirection ends with, so you can see the actual redirection is supposed to be author and list, but it ends with the list XXS, so that's the reason it failed. Okay, all right, so that's good. All right, so that is that controller. Okay, can see that from the ID as well. And you can study-based service class test code. So this is the service code. So you know we have, if you take a look at the service code does something very simple. Service. If you take a look at the service code, excuse me. So it does have a single method in this service, create thesis. So when the author, from the author, you get the author instance, and then you create a new book. So whenever a thesis is created, it's going to create a second book. It's going to create the book instance as well. Okay, so it returns a book instance. It's very simple. Service. So if you take a look at the service Spark. Here we are testing a couple of things. So here, when creating thesis, a new book is created. So here we save we provide the author instance, and we're going to save that author instance, and then we call the service. Again, this is an example. When we say test for and Gutenberg service, there should be service field automatically added for you, so you can call the method of the service. So I'm going to call create thesis and service, and the book count is now supposed to be 1, because when you create a the thesis, the book's supposed to be actually they created. So the book count's supposed to be 1. Okay. So this is something pretty similar as well. So when you run the code, it should actually run fine. Alright, so you can actually modify book count 2, and then you should fail. Okay, so I'm gonna just move forward. Study Spark configuration. So if you take a look at the build config, the only thing you have to do is basically add the Spark plugin. So this is the way that you're gonna actually add the Spark plugin. The current version is 07, and you also have to provide this dependency. Okay, so this is the change that has been added already. Okay, all right, let's move on. So we still have to do a JEP. Okay, okay, so let's move on. JEP basics. So what is and why JEP? JEP is a browser automation solution. So you can use JEP typically for acceptance testing for web application. It could actually be used for automating websites. If you perform a certain task on a website, you can send a lot of requests through the JEP, and also you can do screen scraping. All right, so underlying technology that is being used by JEP is expressiveness of Groovy language. So it provides, you're basically using highly effective DSL for the testing, and cross-browser automation capabilities of WebDriver. So people use Selenium along with your WebDriver for the testing with multiple browsers, right? So JEP is built on the top of the WebDriver. So you're going to test your applications over multiple browsers, and it's actually using jQuery-like content selection and traversal scheme. So jQuery, the syntax. $ something, and you can actually select, it's actually the same scheme is going to be used for selecting content and traversal in JEP code. And robustness of page object pattern. So this is actually pretty exciting feature of JEP. So you can actually abstract the page, okay? And that abstract page could be actually reused in multiple places. So we're going to actually talk about that in a few seconds. All right, page object pattern. So page object pattern gives us the common sense way to model content in a reusable and maintainable way, right? So we're going to actually see examples in a few minutes. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, that's fine. So whether within your web pages UI, there are areas that your test interact with, and page objects simply model these as objects within the test code. So if you have some fragment in your page that needs to be actually used in multiple places, you can abstract out that as a page. Okay. So this reduces the amount of duplicated code, and it means that the UI changes, the fix will be changed in one place. Okay, you're going to just change in page object rather than in many places. Okay, so we're going to actually see examples where page object pattern is not used, and then see the example of page object is used. Okay. All right, so JEP provides the first class support is page object pattern via what is called the page object and module object. Okay, so let's see an example of this. So this is the JEP example without using page object pattern. So here you have to, so this is Grapes. You're actually adding this library in your application. So we are adding WebDriver, and so this is the testing. So I'm actually testing. I want to go to the browser to go to this website, google.com NCR is actually doing Google search. Okay, and then basically this is jQuery like a syntax. Okay, so you can actually add, you can check when you go to this page, you can check whether the title is Google or not. Okay, and then you are going to enter value to this Q input field. Okay, Wikipedia, and then you're gonna wait. The page is returned, and the page title should end with a Google search. Okay, and then you're gonna actually define the first link, and then you're going to see the first link text is Wikipedia. Okay, and then you're going to click the link, and then you're going to wait for another page, and that page should actually have Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, as a title. Okay, so you can see JEP is using Groovy language for highly expressive the syntax, and this is an example of jQuery like a selector. For example, I'm actually selecting Q input field to enter Wikipedia value. Now this is an example where you are not using page pattern. The reason this is not good is because if you actually are doing this kind of operation in multiple places, multiple testing, then you are duplicating this code over and over. So what you can do is you can actually capture this logic as a page object. Okay, so this is an example for using page object. So you actually capture a home page, Google home page, as a page object. So on that home page, the URL is supposed to be this, and the title is supposed to be this, and content is like this. And then you could actually have another page called like a Google result page, like a page, and then your testing code that you have, and then we have another page called the Wikipedia page. So what we do is here in this logic, we're actually seeing three pages. The first page of this, and then we actually see the result page, and then the second page, and then last is a wiki page. Okay, so here, because you are not using page object, the pattern, if you actually use those pages in multiple places, you're actually duplicating the code over and over. So here, if you're using page object pattern, you capture those pages like this. And then your code is going to be very simple like this. The same code that we have seen in previous slide is like this. So if you're writing another testing code, you can actually use these pages over and over. So basically, this page object is going to be used multiple places, thus providing reusability and encapsulation. Okay, so that's page object. Modules are reusable definition of content that can be used across multiple pages. So let me actually show you the modules. So you can create modules like this. Okay, extend modules, and then inside, when you create a page, you are going to actually use these modules. So you can actually have some fragment, and then you can actually capture it as a module. So you can see the modules is actually another way of. So it's like it works like a page, but extend the module, and this is actually typically used inside the page. So if you're creating multiple pages, and if they happen to share a same fragment, then that fragment can be captured as a module. Okay, all right. So that's a concept of page pattern and page object pattern. And page object pattern is going to support this page object as well as module object. All right. So JEP and testing framework. So JEP itself does not include any kind of testing or execution framework. So JEP could be used any testing framework such as the Spark, JUnit, Testing NG, Cucumber, and EGB. Typically, people will use JEP along with the Spark. So that is the good combination, a popular combination people use for testing, functional testing purpose. And that's what we're going to actually use here. So if you're using JEP with the Spark so here, this is an example for usage of JEP within the Spark framework. Okay. So here, Google Wiki page testing page, we are creating a specification. So given this page, when we actually go to this Google page, what we expect is the Google homepage. Okay, when you go to this page, you expect this. That makes sense. Then when we actually perform the search of Wikipedia, then we are going to wait for this Google result page. And then when we enter, so this is end. Okay, the link is Wikipedia. And then, by the way, you can actually have a multiple when and then in a single specification. So we are basically, having multiple the when and then combination. So we click this link, and so that is when that click is linked, then the response is supposed to be Wikipedia page. Okay, so that is JEP, the spec specification using JEP. So here you're actually extending JEP spec. Okay, all right, so let's actually do exercise 4. I know some of you guys in the States probably are hungry. I'm too, but let me actually finish all these things first. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually go this time the sample JEP page, and let's do this. We're going to go JEP, and now we're going to actually run so here we are. Let's actually take a look at this code first. If you, no, that's not what I want. Yeah, so I want to actually go to samples JEP. I go to samples JEP. Yeah, so this is not the code of Grails, okay? So these are genuinely, this is actually if this one is not using the without paging a page pattern, okay? And this one is actually using page pattern, the same thing but using page pattern. So this is a Groovy code, okay? So you can just run this code and see how it works out. So I'm gonna just run it, Groovy, and I'm gonna just copy this guy. Oops. Okay, and let's see what happens. It's basically running the Firefox as a default the browser, and it's gonna actually go to the Google search, and am I running it? Oh, okay. So it actually download the driver. That's why it takes us some time. Okay. So now it should work. Yeah. So you're gonna actually see what's happening. So the driver is about like 10 megabytes. That's the reason it took some time for us to see the result. Okay. Yeah, why? Okay. Certainly taking his time. Let me try again. So in this case, it's supposed to actually start the Firefox, and it should actually go through the logics that I have. It should actually go to the Google search, and if I in this case I'm actually yeah, here we go. Seems like it's happening. Okay, good, excellent. So this is happening for me. So it's just typing jpassion.com. Okay, and that's it actually. So it's very simple code. So that's the same code, and now we're gonna actually run the this guy. Okay, so this is using page pattern, same code but with using page pattern, page object pattern. Here you go, and Google, and type jpassion.com, and it came back with the link. Okay, all right. So if you close it, then that gets closed as well. And you can see, yeah, so this is the case that we're actually doing a little bit of testing, okay? But I'm going to just move ahead because I want to actually move on to the next one, okay? So let me just go to, yeah, so I'm going to just go to the next. So basically run the JPassion. So now we're going to see how we can use the Grails functional testing with the JEP plugin, okay? So the Grails does not come with a functional testing framework, okay? So you have to actually use some, the plugins for the functional testing. So the most popular, so these are the possible functional testing plugins you can use: JEP, Canoe, Web Test, and things like that. But again, JEP is the most popular, okay? So the JEP Grails plugin is a developer-focused tool for automating the interaction between web browsers and web content. It aims to make a browser automation, originally for web testing, easier and more productive. So basically, you can run this testing for all your testing to your, for for different browser types. Okay, so it can be used for scripting, scraping, general automation. So most Grails developers use a JEP and Spark combination, as I said before. Okay. So this is a page object, the example. So I actually have a list page. Okay, so here the static at the title is a person list, and this is a content. Okay, and this is a functional testing example. So I'm actually testing the person CRUD spec example. Okay, so here this is a when. The first, for this feature method, it goes to list page, and then person row size is supposed to be 0. When I add a person, meaning when I call the new person button click, okay, then I go to create page, things like that. Okay. All right. So finally, we are going to go to exercise 5. So we are going to go we are going to run the So basically, when you run this application, it's just adding a person and deleting a user and things like that. So I'm not going to run this guy. Okay, we're going to actually go to the functional testing. So I'm going to go to JEP. We're going to go to samples JEP. Oh, not that one. Yeah, what am I? Yeah, I'm actually going to Grails. Samples, Grails, and the JEP example, Grails. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we are going to actually test the functional testing. So right now we are actually running the Firefox. Later on we're going to actually use a Chrome. Okay, so we're going to use both. So let's run this guy. Okay. So soon it will actually start the Firefox, and it will try to, yeah, it's running Spark test right now. Okay, so now it's starting it. Okay. Okay, so now it's actually adding the new person. So new person is being added. Okay, Sang Shin is added, and then it's going to the show person. Okay, and then list person, and then delete. Okay. Yeah, looks like there was one test failed. Okay, maybe I actually make a change or something like that. Okay. All right, so that's what's happening, and you can actually take a look at the JEP configuration in the Grails application. Okay, so let's actually run it, the same thing with a cron. Okay, so I'm going to run the cron this time. So, you know, in this case, what you have to do is basically specifying JEP environment to cron. Okay, so I'm going to run the same application with a cron. Okay, so this time it will actually start the Chrome browser for testing. So you can see the value. I mean, you can actually add this the testing script as part of your nightly build process, maybe as part of your continuous integration testing, and you can actually find out, you know, whether this functional testing with your browser is actually, you know, functioning, behaving as expected. Okay, this is the same thing. New person is added. New person is clicked, and new person is being added. And you know, the person is being edited, so enable this turned off and update it, and then person is deleted. Okay, and then we are actually updating again. Oh, person 2 is created. Okay, yeah, edit a person 2 deleted. Okay, so test passed this time. Okay. I have actually added another sample application. So here is actually Happy Trail sample application written by James Ward. And you can actually run the same thing here. So let's actually run the Chrome here. So this is more complex. The application that you can actually run, see how, you know, testing is being done, and you can certainly take a look at the code. By the way, I could not figure out how to do this one with the Internet Explorer. I mean, you know, some of the configuration I have to do is a little bit, I mean, it just didn't work for me, so I'm still working on it. So, but for now, the Chrome and the Firefox seems to be working reasonably well. So this is a Happy Trail sample application is for, you know, finding the, you know, the running route in different regions and things like that. So you'll see how that application works in a few seconds. Okay, and so this is a configuration. Yeah, so what you have to do is you have to actually provide the drivers. Okay, so right now we are just using the Chrome and Firefox, right? Okay, so it's now going on. So let me just stop so that you guys can actually see things. Okay, so still doing things. You can actually test for, you know, the 4 different ways: HTML unit, Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. And so this is the configuration. You have to actually add these to the dependencies. And in terms of the plugin, you have to actually add this JEP plugin. Okay, and yeah, so this is the person testing code. Okay, So this is JUnit. Yeah, this is the JUnit version, and this is the Spark version, JEP and Spark version. Okay, so this JUnit version is you are using still the this is actually the yeah, it's not using yeah, this is the JEP testing, but it's not using Spark as a testing framework, but using JUnit. Okay. Exercise 6 is actually for integration testing with the Spark, so you know I'm not going to actually spend time on this one. It's something that I kind of showed you already. Okay. So once I show you, let me see whether this is still going on. Okay. Okay, here we go. Again, it has to download the driver. That's the reason. Okay, so I say allow. Okay, so this is the application. So it goes to regions, and it goes to the Colorado Front Range, and it goes to bike route, and it's trying to create a new account, and yeah, so now it's going to go to regions, and so Colorado Western Scope, and edit region, and add route. Yeah, so this is done by the system admin type of person, I guess. Fun right, regions. Okay, and wait for the response. Okay, so okay, yeah, so yeah, so this is actually reasonably good size application that is being tested, okay, using the Spark. Okay, all right, so that's the end of the presentation. So let me